Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is my Forbes colleague, money and politics reporter, Kyle Mullins. Kyle, thanks for coming back on.
Always great to be here, Brittany. Thanks for having me.
You have some reporting about Congressman Matt Gaetz and his family's expansive real estate portfolio, and you write this for Forbes, that Congressman Matt Gaetz has a knack for making headlines and his father has a knack for making money. And if we all remember, Congressman Matt Gaetz really gained national prominence after he led the charge to oust Kevin McCarthy from House Speaker. And so first, tell us about the recent controversies Matt Gaetz has found himself embroiled in post Kevin McCarthy ouster.
Absolutely. So Matt Gaetz has developed a reputation. He's a young, very pro-MAGA, pro-Trump member of the GOP caucus in the House of Representatives, and he's really developed a reputation as a sort of a firebrand, hard right, conservative member of the House. Like you mentioned, he did lead the overthrow of Kevin McCarthy, the former House Speaker. And he's also been under investigation both by the Department of Justice and most recently by the House Ethics Committee for a number of different issues. And the House Ethics Committee just this week actually released a statement confirming that he is still under investigation for alleged sexual misconduct, drug use, other ethical violations. And I should note here that he categorically denies all of the accusations that are being made against him.
So now let's move on to the patriarch of the family, who is Don Gaetz.
Don Gaetz, much more of an establishment Republican type, I would say. Not the same sort of firebrand that Matt Gaetz, his son, is sort of cutting. He started out as a businessman. He built a hospice company that he sold in 2004 for over $400 million. He got a pretty nice payout from his share of that. Then he ran for office. Don Gaetz served for a decade in the Florida Senate, including 2 years as the Senate president. He was term limited out, but now he's able to run again, and he's actually running for his old seat this year. And he's also, at that same time, he's plowed his cash into a pretty decent-sized real estate empire over several decades. There's some interesting properties in there. That was kind of what piqued my interest in this story. So yeah, I think let's dive into that.
We will dive into that, but first, he's pretty rich. Forbes is estimating he's worth $33 million. So how did he make that fortune?
The vast majority of that money came from, like I said, selling that hospice company that he in 2004. Interestingly enough, it actually sold to the parent company of Roto-Rooter, the company that makes the drain cleaner thing, and they own sort of two large brands. You got Roto-Rooter and you've got this hospice company. Kind of an odd parent company that owns both.
So now the Gaetz family has a pretty, as we said earlier, expansive real estate portfolio. And when you were reporting on it for Forbes, you divided it into three camps: Don Gaetz, properties of Don Gaetz through companies, and Matt Gaetz. So where are these properties located?
Basically all of these properties, no matter who exactly owns them and which category I put them into, basically all of them are in Northwest Florida, well to the west of Tallahassee. This is an area, I'm from Florida originally. It's on the Alabama border. Some people call it Floribama. They share a lot of economic and cultural ties with the rest of the Deep South. Most of these properties are in coastal communities or near the water in one form or another. But I should also note that Don Gaetz, in addition to all of these Northwest Florida properties, he's got two additional properties, one in New York and one in Wisconsin.
So now let's first talk about Don Gaetz's properties. Where are they? What type of properties are they? And how much are they worth?
So most of the more valuable properties are owned outright by Don Gaetz. These are the ones that we're talking about in this category. And among his 10 properties that he declares that he owns outright on his financial disclosures, the most interesting, I think, is the Truman Show house, which is the house that Jim Carrey lived in the 1998 movie, The Truman Show, in Seaside, Florida. That one's worth almost $4 million. And then we also have an 8,500 square foot mansion in Panama City, Florida. That one's currently for sale for about $3.3 million. And then he's got several other homes and properties, some plots of undeveloped land, and then he's got a condo in Manhattan and some undeveloped land in Wisconsin that kind of help round out that portfolio.
So now let's move on to the second bucket, properties that Don Gaetz owns through companies. What companies are these? And talk to us about the properties a little bit.
So there's two companies we're talking about here. One is called Trevoron and the other is called Maturin. And as far as we can tell, they're both just real estate holding companies. They don't seem to actually have much of a footprint beyond that. These two companies that Don Gaetz declares he owns, he owns both of the properties. We're not 100% sure that he owns 100% of these two companies, but we're fairly sure. And you've got kind of an eclectic collection of real estate here. You've got a $2 million home in Seaside, same place where that Truman Show house was located. You've got a pair of homes in Niceville. You've got some undeveloped plots. And I think the most interesting thing here is that one of the companies, Trevoron, several of its assets were actually bought off of Matt Gaetz, Don Gaetz' son. And they specifically, Trevoron bought these properties. These are all kind of undeveloped lots, or at least most of them are, from Matt when Matt was first running for Congress and he was kind of needing some cash. A spokesperson for Matt Gaetz pointed out that he was paid the publicly appraised value of the properties at the time, so there's no evidence of foul play here. But it's interesting that that's kind of how these empires have intersected through these companies.
I'm interested about the strategy behind here. What's the reasoning behind buying a real estate property through a company instead of buying it just outright yourself? Because Don Gaetz has done both.
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons someone might do that, and they're fairly legitimate reasons. You might want to disguise the owner of the property or of the company, or otherwise distance yourself from it in some way. You might want to route any income through the company instead of into your own pocket for tax reasons, because sometimes business income is taxed differently than personal income. You might want to split ownership with somebody else, and maybe that's easier by starting a company that owns the property instead of just splitting the property directly. We don't actually know his exact ownership share in these companies, like I said, so there's a chance that maybe someone else has a stake in some of these properties.
So now finally, let's move on down to Matt Gaetz. What properties does he own? Where are they? And how much are they worth?
So Matt Gaetz used to have a larger real estate portfolio. In 2010, when he was a member of the Florida House, he declared owning upwards of a dozen or so different pieces of real estate. He sold most of them off at this point. What is left is 6 undeveloped plots of land. I think the most interesting among them is there's a lot in Okaloosa County that he bought for a little over $35,000 when he was just 15 years old, according to the deed at the time. And the Gaetz spokesperson did not respond to my question about how a middle or high schooler could afford a $35,000 plot of land.
Well, Kyle Mullins, per usual, thanks for your reporting. You're welcome back anytime.
Thanks, Brittany. Always great to be here.